This is day 5 of the June 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. Here are some of the most recent questions. This one was given to me in writing. If I feel inspired while meditating, or watching the trees, or engaging in ritual, I feel it deep in my heart and it gives me great motivation for practice. But if I'm always creating my own reality, this inspiration can't be real. But I feel that I need the inspiration to keep up this work wholeheartedly. Will I become too cynical or detached if I see it as not real? How much emotional engagement is helpful? Does creativity or the urge to do something only come out of the feelings of insufficiency and separation? If the self is just images, why is there in me such a strong sense of me and mine, if the self is just images? What exactly do you mean by separation? I was very amazed to hear someone say they were never loved or have never been loved. I am sure most parents do love their children in a totally accepting way. I realize that only when I see the absolute futility of all the movements of self-enclosed thought or self-centered thought, that they will come to an end. Don't we need to try to do something, make an effort to do something, to pay attention, or else we go to sleep? I am slowly finding out that constantly trying to do something and making an effort is what keeps the mind in constant agitation. I can really see quite clearly that I am loving my children as an extension of myself. So in loving them, I love myself. I feel that all that I've ever loved or believed in is shattered. There's nothing to hold on, and in this realization there is great pain and grief. What is the use of living like that? In this retreat, maybe more than in any that I presently remember, a great deal and a great intensity of pain, sense of loss, grief, fear, even despair has been there for people, not for everyone at every moment. And in being with people, listening to what we have to say about what is happening to ourselves, how we see it, how we feel it. In listening to all of that and feeling it oneself very deeply, there is an urge to talk about it or talk out of it, into it, from it, whichever way. But at the same time, out of a vast space of nothing. Which is that listening and looking space where human pain and grief is clearly revealed for what it is, how it comes into being, and how it is sustained, and maybe also can melt away. So in talking this morning about some of the questions, going into them, can we share, first of all, the words that are said, the meaning of the words, on that level on which we understand words. Also feel deeply or look at what is being expressed in words, which is not the other person's grief or sadness, it is here, among all of us, manifesting here today, there tomorrow. But always, potentially or actually there, is sorrow, grief, anxiety, longing for a better life, for a happiness that one may never have known or has remembered way in the past, from way past. So share in that as we look at it, but can we look at it, at least for moments at a time, from a vast looking, listening space, which is not one's own? Which has nothing to do with me and you, mine and yours, personalities and so forth. And yet it is not separate from the way personality manifests and interclashes or interacts. Not separate from what is happening in human beings. Not just here in this hall, or as some 40 people have come together to sit, but throughout the world. We're not looking at personal grief alone, personal upset, anxiety, or sense of loss and abandonment, frustration or despair. We're looking at the human mind. Spaciously, is that possible? Looking freely without withdrawing or finding fault, accusing or condemning, and also not accepting what it is that is seen in ourselves and others. Why condemn it? Why find fault? Why accept it? If it can be seen for what it is, out of a spacious looking, which includes sunshine, clouds, and rain, and the birds, trees, the earth, and all the grasses in flower and seed. Squirrels, rabbits, chipmunks, bugs, buzzing, biting flies. Not all flies that buzz bite. We think so. We thrash about. As for the first question, feeling inspired while watching a tree or engaging in a ritual, is that wrong? Or do I need it? I feel I do need it. It motivates me to carry on. Well, it has already happened at the time when it's written this. We're not saying, cut it out. Here, we're not engaging in any particular ritual, although some people feel maybe walking around in a circle is ritualistic. But there are beautiful sights and they are inspiring, the person says. Meaning, what does it mean, inspiring? There's joy in seeing the mist of the morning, the flowers and the sun rising behind them in that magical light of color, and flowers and grasses, the dew on the leaves. There's joy in seeing that. Or maybe one can't even put a word to it. So when that happens, that happens. It's already happened, as one notices that it happened. Noticing meaning representing verbally to oneself, this is what has happened, I felt inspired. The verbalization is necessary for communicating with each other, but it is not necessary, even though the brain does it habitually. And then comes the question, should I continue to do this? Is this all right? It's what it is. A thought of something pleasurably remembered, and there is a feeling, a gush of good feeling. Somebody questioned me when I said that. Said, what do you mean by good feeling? Well, don't you know it? Remembering something or looking forward to something pleasurable. Like one person said, an ice cream cone in the heat. Doesn't that give some kind of a, whatever you call it, blah, blah, blah. And here this person says, this gives me a great motivation for practice. Practicing what? To look, to listen, to be there. The energy to sit down or to walk. What if there's no energy? Nothing is inspiring, which some people tell me. There's so much sadness, so much grief in this heart and chest and in the head and behind the ears and around the eyes. I can't see anything. Will one go on? Just being the way one is this very instant without creating a conflict about it. The conflict arising the moment thought says, I shouldn't feel like this. I wish I felt like others who seem to be so happy. I wish I would finally put this behind me and get happiness. But this is what is there right now. And in a way, if one listens carefully, one may say it beckons to be heard and felt, sensed, not pushed away and not wallowed in. There's a fine line between pushing away a state by condemning it, escaping into all kinds of commentary, or wallowing in it. Wallowing meaning the continuation of the sad story of my life, remembered in stringed together or strung together instances. We can remember our story by remembering different incidents that happened and thought creating a continuous story out of it. Always me there as maybe the victim, or the heroine or the hero. And if it's the story of me as a victim, as a sufferer, then adding to this story or perusing this story, looking at all of its pictures and illustrations, creates more grief. One must find that out for oneself. Or can one? One must nothing. Can it happen to see it, perusing the story, adding to it, underlining certain things, which we do, the thought does it, creates more of a sense of victimization, loss, grief, sadness, pain. As one maybe detects the moment the story writing or story reviewing goes on in the mind, can one detect this as already a step away from what is happening right now? What the physical body manifests as grief and sadness and pain symptoms. The aching heart, the chest pressure, pressure in the pain, maybe pain around the eyes, a feeling of exhausted muscles maybe, whatever. Listen to it. Allow it to be there and let it have all the space it needs to be felt without being hemmed in by the thought, I shouldn't feel that way. I ought to feel differently. Because this is creating additional pain, additional conflict, which manifests in this body as more stress. More anxiety. The thought, will this last forever? Just sometimes one can experiment with this right now. Will this condition last forever? Is a paining thought, isn't it? It's been like this for me forever, as far as I can remember. That commentary is a paining commentary, isn't it? May go right on the tear glands. And does it have to do with the bare fact right now of how this body is manifesting all that has already been said about it and felt? By thinking about what has happened to one, what is happening to one, and what will maybe or probably happen to one in the future. Can one begin to glimpse that this is how most of our pain is created? Not just by someone leaving us, or talking rudely to us, or being insensitive to us, stepping on our toe, or maybe on the whole foot, but how we feel about it, how we string it into the story of our life, and how then this whole past experience of which I call my life begins to reverberate with hurt and pain. And not just hurt and pain, but also a revulsion against it. Or lashing out against it. But that may not be all. There may also be a latching onto it, an attachment to it. It doesn't make logical sense to be attached to misery, to the miserable story of my life. But if this is what I feel my life is, and this is how I see my existence, isn't there attachment to that? is identification with it, that which is attachment. This is my life, my story, and usually feeling none is quite as bad as this, or as painful, or as full of suffering. And I'm not saying it is not. We don't know. We'd have to compare. And I don't know whether there's any objective comparison, because everyone seems to feel, at least at a certain stage of one's life, or having lasted throughout the past, one's own story is the worst of it, the most suffering, the most sorrowful. And has the least happy prospects for the future. And is there attachment to that? If one feels like that, maybe one doesn't feel like that. But it happens to us at one time or another, doesn't it? Identification with my remembrances, with what I know I am or was or will be or should be. Identification with it, meaning the thought, this is me, this is what I am, or this is what I should be, or would like to be. This makes for the feeling of meanness. And in that, the feeling of a sufferer of the events that happen and have happened, a victim of it, an endurer of it. And we're questioning the victim, the endurer, the sufferer, what that is. Whether it is anything but thought. Not that the body hasn't gone through stress and isn't going through stress, particularly at thinking and remembering, but also at being slighted, left by someone, told off. But what happens as one is slighted, talked to rudely, told off, left for someone else? What causes the pain? I'm not saying there shouldn't be any pain, or it's all in one's head. Just see how head and body work together in inseparable unison. Including the pain, I have hurt someone. Maybe not ever to be made up. I've hurt someone. Will never be able to make up for it. What a thought. The fact is, hurt took place. And then the guilt of having done it. The fear I will never be forgiven. The relationship has been wrecked, destroyed. And the mind traveling in channels other than becoming very clear about what it is that happened. It's very hard to muster objective memory, because at a moment of hurt or anger happening, memory is not very freely recording. And then the anticipation, one knows what's going to happen, how it's going to be, and that scenario causes more guilt, more grief, or upset, fear, whatever. But does one really know beyond this moment? Does one even know this moment? before thought starts making comments, evaluating it, bringing it in line with a past story. What is this moment? Not the next moment, this moment. Whatever the body is manifesting, can it be felt? Allowed to be there, spaciously, unobstructed by habitual bracing against it. It takes very careful, subtle awareness of how the body, not just thought, but also the body, resists, numbs, encapsulates, tenses, manifests this I don't want. I don't want to feel this way. That the body itself manifests that thought. And therefore cannot function unhindered to bring to some kind of fresh balance all what has been triggered by what happened and the thought about it. If left alone to manifest and feel what it does, the body will come to balance again. But only if not bombarded with new commentary, new assessment of the situation, assessment of the future. Immediately it manifests new symptoms. It has tremendous flexibility to manifest states. And also an astonishing capacity to renew itself. In the midst of what is felt as utter chaos of emotions, tensions, stress, and so forth. The body, like anything natural, and the body too is natural. It has grown out of this immense, unfathomable unfoldment of life. And in this life of which it is a manifestation, there is the capacity for complete renewal at any moment. Shedding old skin is happening all the time. Organs, tissues renew themselves. Can the mind renew itself? The brain? The way we have been taught, brought up, conditioned through our parents and society, people, teachers, priests, ministers. There has to be an effort of will in order to change, to become better. or else putting oneself in relationship with a higher being, a God, praying so that grace may descend upon one, or maybe God interfere a little bit more directly, helping me. That is our traditional thought. We have to exert willpower. We have, or else submit to a higher will. Thine will be done. But here we're wondering if they're unprecedented as it may be in our education or society, whether will itself can be questioned. Will and the effort to achieve betterment, to achieve happiness, to achieve liberation, and the traditional effort to get there. Whether all of that can be questioned. By questioning meaning not believe in it. Watch it if effort comes up, because we've all been conditioned that way. To make effort, which means the mind command in this computer is work hard, or you must. And to observe whether or not with this command, work harder, you aren't working hard enough. You must get someplace, or must achieve, must get results. Whether not with that command there also comes an instant resistance. Will and resistance always going together. Effort and resistance being twins. To observe that for oneself. To see it, because one is questioning it. One is not saying, point blank, I need willpower, I need effort, or else I get no place. Also questioning what place one wants to get and what that is, other than thought. As one person said, unless I see the utter futility of the patterns, of the thought patterns that run this life, dominated, until the utter futility of it is seen, they can't drop. They run. Like automatic pilot. So we're wondering. We're not saying it is so or it isn't so at this moment. Can just being with what is, spaciously, openly, non-resistingly, non-pushingly, without an agenda, just allowing what is there to reveal itself, be felt, be heard. Can bring a change which is no division from what's there, no conflict with it. The other, will, effort, trying to become better, trying to get someplace, is constant conflict, ever renewing itself, ever continuing. Do you see that? Can we see that? Whereas wondering gently, openly, as open as is possible, maybe as open as a thickly clouded sky, wondering what is there, and not any attitude toward. No identification with it. Poor me or good me. Just what's there. Not I have that or this is me, but what is it? And to be sensitive to the subtle revulsions or clingings and wondering what that is. Not I shouldn't cling. I shouldn't condemn, but to see it. Often people say, well, I see it, but then what do I do with it? If there's really seeing, that question doesn't come up. What is seen needs nothing to be done to it. It changes on its own. Because seeing is the absence of division. The absence of the one who wants it to be otherwise, or better or worse. It's the absence or quietness or abeyance of this whole self-centered structure of thought, remembrance, desire, fear. The energy just not entering into that whole network, but remaining with what is. The sounds, the feelings, the sights, the thoughts, or the no thoughts, and not knowing what any of that is. An emptying out, as it were, of any kind of position or attitude which one has cherished or hated as mine. In seeing, there is no mine. There's only seeing, listening to what is there broadly, vastly, and minutely. Manifesting as it is, one knows not how, or why, or for how long. Someone asked, does doing something creative, does that only come out of our sense of insufficiency as a sublimation or compensation? I feel that something creative can only come out of when there is no sense of insufficiency. Then a life without that centered sense of insufficiency, which is me, my past, my incapacity, and all of that quiet in abeyance, then life as it manifests is creative, isn't it? Someone said this morning or sometime yesterday, it's so wonderful to look at trees and clouds. They don't think. Their thinking doesn't come at you. That's probably the beauty of being outside. The only thought that's going on is in this brain. But the trees and squirrels, the crows and the breeze, they don't think. They just breeze and caw. And maybe everyone every once in a while has a glimpse of just walking or breathing and no thought there about me doing that. It's not true anyways. It's just a thought. There's breathing going on. Goodness knows how and why this organism breathes and why this heart beats me. It's happening. Isn't it astonishing? energies circulating, limbs moving, crows cawing, and wind moving trees, or trees moving wind. It's all happening. It's all taking place this instant, with no one doing it. It's happening no matter how painful our past or present thoughts are, or life is. So, for moments at a time, can there just be what is, and not knowing what it is, or why it is, wherefore, or how long? What the use of it is? I don't know what the use of life is. It's life, it's alive, it's living. In sadness and in joy, tears, sometimes tears of laughter. Sometimes someone will say, I really begin to doubt this meditative practice because it doesn't make me feel any better. I'm still where I was. Well, where is one now? Not where one was. Where is one? You don't need meditation for that. You don't need to practice. One needs to listen and be gently, non-conflictingly in touch with it. And not put conditions on it. I'll give you 5 more years, but then you better change. That's how we feel, isn't it? I've already done this so many years, and look at the results. This way of working, call it meditation or what you will, is one's whole life. There's no time limit on it. Moment of this freedom and withness. Withness is not a good word because there's no one with something. It's just whatever is. And then maybe something happens. And there's this, as we've called it in one meeting, the vortex of me-mind thoughts, of self-centered thoughts, like a vortex in a blender. Whatever goes in gets sort of sucked into it and mixed up into this thought of me and mine, and woe me or good me or bad others. It can happen anytime. And it can be seen anytime. Sometimes before the blender starts, sometimes in the midst of the swirling. Sometimes way long after the whole thing has been drunk. That's a pretty good one. See, we have such conditioned ways of thinking. It's too late. I shouldn't have done it. I did it again. And these sentences are a part of that vortex. It becomes a new way of living if one detects this treacherous journalism that is going on in the mind, with loaded words, loaded headlines, loaded cartoons about oneself and others, which is in addition to what has happened to us or to each other. To watch for the beginning of the editorial and maybe not go on with it. If one notices I'm about to expound on what he did to me. And if one experiments with it, the more lines come out, the hotter I feel with anger or whatever, upset. But I don't have to continue editorializing. Just what he said, and that's it. I felt heard, or I didn't. I said something back, and now he's heard. And let's see what happens. And remain unburdened by the commentary. Because that creates images of ourselves, of the situation. And then the situation gets very blurred and sticky and heavy. Cloudy. Unmanageable. The instant itself, the incident, can even be forgotten, the less it is belabored. And if one is lucky, the other one is forgetting it too. Which happens. The remembering comes from belaboring things. We've all noticed that, haven't we? And in this, what we call this work of living this moment, at least for moments, one finds that by being here, the belaboring diminishes, and therefore one forgets what people did and said. Even if one was hurt at the time, it doesn't last, because the belaboring is noticed and not entered into. It's the danger of it is seen because one has gone through it time and time again. Talking to oneself about others and talking among ourselves about others. That helps really fixate images about people in our minds. And we don't have to do that. If there is some intelligent watching of what this does, then maybe intelligence will say, whoa, at the moment it's going to start up, and drop it instantly. If it's not noticed, it goes on. It's in the air. We human beings do it. Carry grudges for decades, maybe. And there are plays about this, how grudges are passed on in the families. Be sure that the kids know about whom to hate. There's not just plays about it. It's happening. One Jewish mother told me she was wondering whether to send her children to the Jewish school. She was questioning it in a way, but then she says, I did it anyways. Because I want them to know, if there ever is a Holocaust again, why it is we're suffering and how we have suffered before. I want that memory to be carried, not forgotten. And you know, by not forgetting a memory, by carrying it, cherishing it, enshrining it, we don't see what we're doing now. Which goes for guilt to enshrining my guilt. Penitence forever. I don't see what I'm doing now. The mind is occupied. It's enclosed. It's not open to see, and that's why we put our foot into it again. No matter how much our resolution to do penitence or to become better, the mind has to be open to see where each foot walks, where the hands go, where the mouth goes. what is this moment? Right now, what is going on? What is happening? When I don't need to know it, when I don't need to remember it, to carry it, to reject it, to clutch it, just what is it? Like the wind in the trees. See, not knowing does not mean ignoring. It means openness of not knowing, and therefore being all of that without identification. We will end here for today.